Hi there, welcome to the Noah Presgrove case. Today we're focusing in on the blood situation and in a way the autopsy injury sustained to Noah's body. Acknowledgement to those in the background for viewer requested videos. I'm going to try and follow through with that today. Granted, I'll be honest with you, I'm not an expert in this particular area, and especially when it comes to pronouncing certain medical terms, but I can at least present to you and acknowledge a key post or two from Facebook which may have been forgotten about possibly, and for other people never seen before if you're not on certain Facebook pages. I'll read through it. I'll try and give my thoughts and analyse if necessary. I can definitely at the end give my conclusion, or at least where I'm at this moment in time in the case. What do I believe? Hit and run, murder, something in between, and go from there. I don't know about reading out any comments, but we'll just go through it bit by bit. I know one recent viewer, I believe called Beauty Guru or something, they wanted to maybe take a look at stuff like this, so we can kind of do that in a way and just see where it really goes. So welcome to those that are currently here in a live premiere. Share your thoughts and reactions in the chat box on the right hand side of the screen. And if you do want to leave your thoughts after watching this video, feel free to drop a comment down below. I can respond back later. There'll be a pinned message too with additional links if you want to support this channel, support me, without YouTube being greedy and getting most of it. Link down below will be by PayPal. And credit to those people in recent time that have supported the channel. You know who you are, very good to see, and even recently, very recently too. And for everybody else that's just interested in recent coverage, top right up there where the eye symbol is, click on it, you'll find the full playlist and the recent videos that I have done. Now, I will acknowledge that when it comes to the autopsy, the state of Noah's body is something I've not looked into that often, and one reason being because I'm not an expert in that area, so it's a bit harder to cover. That's why I seek to alternatives which could tell its own story to make sense of possible cause of death and how Noah ended up in a particular place. I mean, depending how today goes, the next video that I could do is in regards to the shorts, the condition of them compared to the condition of other shorts, whether that be before or after the supposed white short video, if it does ever come about, and if it is clear enough, and if that video is available somehow, maybe that can be presented first. Because look, material coming along the way, turning some tables upside down, not everybody's too pleased with it, of course. If there are any counterpoints with counter evidence, that's what's most important. I could do some separate discussion-based videos as well in regards to who do you trust, who would you believe and listen to, evidence versus counter evidence or lack of it, but you're supposed to take their word for it. All kinds of discussions that can come about, and I can share with you my thoughts. I don't know if it will help anyone, but maybe reserve that for a separate video so we don't get too heavy there with the psychological aspect. So I think with that being said, I'm just going to show you these Facebook posts, and I believe it does give like a date when they came about. They are somewhat old, so I don't know if people remember them or not. I haven't seen them myself because I'm not looking all the time. So it'll be a first time for me. Without further ado, let's get into it. As you see on screen, this is by Tim Daniel, November 1st, 2024. It reads, "We've been having good discussions about the blood, and that got me thinking, let's talk coagulation and drying time of blood. At 7:11 a.m., an OHP officer asked a nearby volunteer firefighter to run home and grab a bed sheet to cover Noah. He was back with the sheet in about 10 minutes, so around 7:21, and when it was placed over Noah, it absorbed blood. As per Dalen's mention of this in his Banfield News Nation interview, this means the blood was still wet at 7:21. Now, sorry to cut in, but when you think about it, first of all, why was a bedsheet or some kind of material used to cover Noah's body? Maybe more so out of respect, then other people can't see. I'm surprised they didn't really have anything on them at the time. Depending who was arriving and what they knew of, or to expect, you would have thought they might have been more prepared, possibly. And this is at 7:11 a.m. Monday morning, I'm guessing. That late on. And at what time did, actual authorities arrive? Well, wasn't it around like 6:15 a.m. onwards? A fair bit of time passing by, if I be honest with you, in order just to get a bloody bedsheet, of all things. As for a nearby volunteer firefighter, any particular named individual there? Taking consideration, at least based off Caden Pressey's timeline of 5:15 onwards, arriving at 5:21 a.m. at the highway, Caden did say in his Partners in True Crime interview he went up to Noah's body and then was going to go to his truck to get some kind of sheeting or a towel to cover Noah's body out of respect. So, if that had taken place, Caden never got the chance to then. Because when returning back to Noah's body, told by one of the unknown truckers to get out of there. And Caden respected the person's wishes and left with Brylan, Isaac, and possibly Mikey, whilst Jack remained on scene. But would it have been any different if Caden had put some kind of sheeting towel over Noah's body earlier? It would have soaked up blood quicker. Would it have made anything more confusing or clearer to understand later on? Let me know your thoughts down below, whether that be a poll or not. Tim Daniels then says, so here's the question. Could we use this to get a better rough estimate for time of death? Time of death based on how fresh the blood is, similar to how you could go to a campfire, feel the ground to see is it warm or not. The warmer it is, the closer to when someone was last camping out there having a fire, and then the colder could be hours, days long ago. There are a lot of variables that might affect dying and coagulation time. I guess maybe temperature and environment too. The day before hit a scorching 100 degrees, which would heat up the black asphalt and the ground temps quite a bit. Would that speed up drying time or slow it down? Maybe speed it up, possibly. What about wind, speed, humidity, and size of the wound? Any variables there? Maybe the bigger the wound, the quicker it will dry up, possibly, or at least leak out quicker, of course. As for humidity, well, the way some of the party goers were dressed, or underdressed, within reason, warm enough. You remember that, was it by Jack Newton, supposedly? Oh, if it gets warm, too hot, Noah will return back from the field to the house. Our latest possible time of death is either just before 5:15, if we use Caden's timeline, or 5:35 a.m. if we're using the 911 call, likely earlier though, because the first 911 call came in at 5:46. Well, no, I think it came in at 5:43 by Tyler H. 5:46 was by Tyler Hardy, which didn't work because it was static. 5:53 was the final call, and the second one for Tyler Hardy, which was successful. But let's just see. Mention about Tyler, the first Tyler H, took 10 minutes to turn around, and to me anyway, a 4 a.m. time of death seems too early for blood to still be wet. Yeah, possibly, but I don't know anything about this subject. If anyone has medical expertise or can weigh in on blood drying and absorption times, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let's put our heads together and see if we can narrow down time of death. I mean, when I think of cold temperatures and how someone could be bleeding out, in some ways it could help you, and in other ways it probably won't. It sounds a bit stupid that, but I'm just trying to think. I'm sure when it's colder, that can affect the flow of blood. I don't mean like really cold that it freezes blood, but I don't know, it slows it down possibly. And then the warmer it is, the blood will pump out more and quicker. I'm just thinking like if I had cuts on me, comparing it to when it's been cold, comparing to when it's been hot, there's that. Now, was there some like mention of like black asphalt or black stuff on Noah's back or something? Could that be caused by any chance of due to the ground being very heated itself? Now, obviously it does come down to temperatures and whatnot. In some countries, when it's been really, really, really hot in the summer, the asphalt or the tarmac has started melting, and if you stand on it, it kind of sticks to you, or it ends up sinking in slightly. So if Noah had fallen or been placed, however, whatever, onto that ground, which is hot, did it kind of act as like a glue? Any remnants stick to Noah's back, possibly? As for other reasons as well. So there's that. Anyone in the chat, feel free to respond if you want. I think 7:11 onward seems rather late, to be honest, but as we heard, what was it, around 10 in the morning when Tyler Hardy ended up leaving. But beyond that, going into the afternoon, Noah's body still left out because the ME guy or person was going down to Lawton doing some other case when they should have been down at the highway. I remember that roughly. Now, we move on to, I guess, the injuries of a different post. This was actually in October 11th, 2024. Tim Daniel once again says, "Greetings all. This is for the visual people like myself. I was asked to share these drawing layers that were created based on the autopsy. Whilst I don't typically post for others, these drawings appear to accurately represent the autopsy, and I think are very well done. Creator seeks an objective evaluation. I didn't want their name attached to influence your opinion, so please study the drawings and discuss the potential causes of injury, each one. We've covered many theories, but maybe you can identify a specific action that led to a particular injury or set of injuries. Although it's not my post, I'd share these details, drawings to facilitate a discussion for the creator. Edited to add definitions of medical terminology listed on images." There is a photo down there, but as for the screenshot, it doesn't seem to show it all. So maybe once I've finished reading what's on screen, I'll try and search for the post on Facebook if possible. And if I can't, well, I'll just move on with my own thoughts. Zoom in just a little bit. Number one of the first injuries, well, no particular order. Avulsion, an injury where a part of the body, like skin or tissue, is forcibly torn away. It could be by friction, it being caught or catched. Not always so much to do with sharp impact, a sharp item. It could be more by a melee tool, a hammer, sledgehammer, material from a vehicle, things like that. It's at a certain angle. I mean, if we're talking about skin tissue torn away, would that be an example that applies to the scalp? Number two, slippage bullae, fluid-filled blisters that can form due to friction or trauma where layers of skin separate. Could friction be linked to how Noah was found on the roadway, whether that be dragged, dumped, thrown, hit, landed, rolled? I wonder. Number three, abrasions, scrapes on the skin caused by friction, removing the surface layer of skin. That could happen if you're dragged across the ground or if you fall and slip. As your skin makes contact whilst you're moving along a rough, jagged surface. Could be on tarmac, asphalt, a bit bumpy or rocky. Yeah. Number four, interrupted cluster abrasions, a pattern of abrasions grouped together but spaced intimately. Number five, contusion, a bruise caused by blunt force trauma leading to bleeding under the skin. And as well, just in general, when it comes to bruises, impact to a certain area, it can break the surface, or at least cause bleeding underneath to an extent. And depending how bad, besides the bruise, the actual blunt force is, with the rib area, shock waves throughout as the body absorbs the energy going inwards. Certain area targeted, concentrated, could lead to ribs breaking, and whilst ribs break, well, they could fracture, but more so break. Where do they go then? Inwards, to a certain angle. Does it puncture an organ within the body? There's that as well. Number 6, fracture, a break or crack in a bone. 7, hemorrhage, severe bleeding, either internal or external. And in this case with Noah, I believe it was more so internal, right? But some of it external from, I guess, the scalp area, or where you would expect it to be. And then was it the ears? Blood coming out of that. 8, internal lacerations, tears or cuts inside the body, often affecting organs or tissues. Oh, here comes the fancy words. Oh, Jesus. Number 9, right hemothorax. I think that's how you say it. Hemothorax or pneumothorax. 700 millilitres, a collapsed right lung with 700 millilitres of blood in the chest cavity. Was the collapsed right and left lung caused specifically by just straight up blunt force trauma impact to the body? Or was it as a result of the ribs breaking and the ribs punctured the lungs, which caused them to collapse? I said, I'm no expert, I'll be honest. And then 10, the left pneumothorax or hemothorax, 300 millilitres, a collapsed left lung with 300 millilitres of blood in the chest cavity. Number 11, oh, here we go, a hemopericardium, 150 millilitres blood accumulation in the pericardium, the sac surrounding the heart, 100 millilitres of blood. And 12, the hemoperitorium, 200 millilitres blood accumulation in the abdominal cavity, 200 millilitres of blood. And you can make out some photos there. If I can find them, we'll transition on to it. Well, I did manage to find the post extended on Facebook just by looking at some key specific search terms. And we got the photos on here, which are actually like a diagram of the injuries to Noah, supposedly accurate as well. And it's just about trying to understand what could have caused the injuries and in general the death. And leave a comment down below. I mean, when I look at it immediately, it looks heavily dominated by a particular type of injury. And we saw on the previous page, I think it was, is like a key in terms of what it means. So an avulsion, injury where part of the body, like skin or tissue, is torn away. And the avulsion is like a circle. If you look at the key on the left-hand side, below it is slippage below, which is basically a circle or half a circle with lines going across inside. And that means fluid-filled blisters that can form due to friction or trauma. And you notice that whereabout on the kneecap on the left leg of Noah. That's interesting. Then you've got the typical abrasions. And abrasions here, scrapes, surface layer only. Interesting. That's very interesting considering what's dominated on the body in this like area at least. Interrupted cluster abrasions. Did we look at that one? Interrupted. A pattern of abrasions grouped together but spaced intermittently. Oh, okay. And what else? Contusion, which is the bruise by blunt force trauma leading to bleeding. I'm probably going to go back and forth, to be honest, because I can't memorize it all on the spot. Also, the key on the left-hand side, you've got blue lines going across. Horizontal means fracture. And then in green, you got hemorrhage. And then an X means internal lacerations, hemorrhages. And then, what does that say? Right and left, the lungs, I believe, the collapsed ones. So when you look at the diagram of Noah from the front, it's not that dominated by lots of injuries in terms of like surface level, but on the back, much more dominated, in my opinion. So you look at the lower part area, like how we've talked about in the past. Was there enough damage to the lower part to justify a hit and run? Do we have deep tissue, bruising, internal bleeding, injuries sustained like that through blunt force trauma or impact to the lower leg area, lower body, whether that be just below the knee, more so above the knee, around the hip area, which, would be more likely for a hit and run. Doesn't seem to be the case, does it? Not much damage, at least on that area. So it's mainly abrasions. However, you do have a star on the right rear leg, the heel area of Noah. And that star is a contusion. A contusion, which is the bruising. What type of bruising would cause it on the heel? Maybe if the heel slammed down on the ground, made contact that way, and it broke, the skin? Not broke the skin. Broke the blood vessels or so, causing it to bleed to the surface, rise to the surface. I said I'm not an expert, okay? I'm just working with what I've got. But then you do have the hashtag symbols around the stomach area, which is interrupted cluster abrasions. And there's kind of like a grouping of it, but spaced. I think that's what it's called. Some on the arms. But in terms of the chest area on the front, you say like above the belly button, where the abs are, the shoulder, from the front, there's nothing, at least how it's shown here. There is nothing. There'll be more internally when we get to the other stuff. But when you think more so it's dominated by abrasions from this diagram, what we've got, that could be caused by being dragged across the ground, running and slipping across the ground, but to a certain degree and extent, whether that be hit by some kind of moving vehicle, and then you land on the ground and you roll in that momentum, dragging along, scraping surface layer. But police have ruled out hit and run. So something else would have had to have caused those grazes, abrasions. The most prominent one, what you see from the front, towards the top of the head area, the scalp, avulsion, where it's been torn or ripped. We heard about that. Was it shaped like a golf club or shaped like a fish? And that's what people thought, well, maybe a certain type of golf club which suits that pattern would link to it. Would a golf club cause a scalp to rip? Would it be a certain angle you strike from? Is a golf club going to cause abrasions and contusions? It could cause contusions, but you'd be thinking upper body area, and there's none of that there. Would simply hitting the ground cause an avulsion on the head? Or would it require some kind of item, blunt, maybe jagged, or blunt with a slight corner to connect with the head? But would such injury like that be caused when Noah is stood up or laying down on the ground? Makes you think. Now, if we focus on the other side, the rear, equally there are still abrasions on the hamstring area and behind the knee. Not too much. And then, of course, very important, on the left, you've got the buttocks, the cheek, which has some markings there. Now, I don't know what they're supposed to represent. Which one is it? Is it slippage, bullae, or abrasions? I can't tell by the colour coding. It looks like lots of dots, maybe abrasions and scrapes. Just know that when looking like surface level type around the lower midsection where Noah's shorts would be, there's not a significant amount of damage, is there? In a way, Noah Presgrove's black shorts were more messed up, supposedly, compared to how it looks on here in terms of his actual body. And I was thinking at some point, what would cause the shorts to be in such a mess? And I know people say, well, the white shorts is what Noah was wearing later on and what was found at the highway. But what caused the damage to the black shorts? Partners in true crime said that they saw the shorts, the black ones, What caused them to be torn, ripped? Alicia Lee said partners in true crime got it wrong. They were not ripped. So why can't we not be consistent with that? If partners in true crime have physically seen the shorts in real life, then why is Alicia telling them that they're wrong? What the hell's going on there? And that the context was from Reddit, in case you were wondering. And it wasn't directly aimed at partners in true crime are wrong, but just more so by leaving the comment saying they weren't ripped in response to my video being shared on Reddit. But I said that they were ripped. I used certain words quoting what partners in true crime said. So indirectly, Alicia was basically saying partners in true crime got it wrong in terms of the condition of the black shorts. But if partners in true crime physically saw them in real life, then why would Alicia be saying that in the first place? Has Alicia seen the black shorts? I don't know. But it'd be nice to try and figure out why they were in that condition. Was it from the side-by-side rollover, or was it during the death of Noah? There's got to be a certain event for him to tear and rip, right? Can shorts be torn or ripped in some kind of vehicle accident, incident? Well, more so accident. Not side-by-side rollover, but or hit and run. Ruled out or not. Maybe if a vehicle catched the shorts somehow, or it snagged onto it, caused them to tear off. Or when getting hit somehow by something or someone. The shorts connecting with the ground and scraping along. I mean, sometimes, depending what the injuries are to the body, if you're wearing clothing, there's more chances that there'll be less damage on your body. More damage on the clothing, possibly. Like, if you got stabbed 20 times all over the body, look at all those marks you would have, and, you know, in terms of a diagram, it'd be a bit of a mess, wouldn't it? But if you had a stab-proof vest on, and then someone tried doing it to you, and then they analysed your body, you probably have nothing. Maybe the odd bruise if there was a bit of impact absorbed with the vest going inwards. Or like if you got shot with a certain caliber within reason, you might not have any holes on you, but you might have a couple of bruising. You might have a contusion. So that's interesting, that. Did Noah Presgrove's shorts protect him from getting more injuries, possibly? Let me know your thoughts. If Noah Presgrove had been wearing a shirt at the time of his death, or a jacket, would we have the same patterns of injuries as seen here, or not? Let me know your thoughts. But a heavy amount of abrasions appear to be on the back, on the left-hand side. Yep, on the left-hand side. Caden Pressey said that when coming across Noah's body, Noah was on his side with his neck twisted. What side would Noah have been on at the time? On his left side, so his left was making contact with the ground? Because if so, it'd be consistent with the patterns of activity what we see on here, appearing to be a lot of abrasions only on one side and not the other. Is that because of the way he fell onto the ground? And that can be interpreted from those that feel it's a hit and run, from those that feel it's another type of vehicle accident, and for the rest that feel it's some kind of murder, but more so on the basis of possibly being dumped on the highway. But to be dumped on the highway would mean thrown so you land only on your side and not roll about. And just by being chucked onto the ground, would it cause that extensive amount of abrasions? Or more so, would you need to be dragged a little bit if it was a moving vehicle? Whether that be being chucked out in a moving vehicle or falling out of a moving vehicle somehow. And if one was to fall out of a vehicle or be chucked out of a vehicle, was Noah alive or dead at that point? In terms of the murder scenario, probably not. Already dead. So I'm trying to include the different possibilities. Some abrasions on the back of Noah. And then I think it's the slippage bullae on the right shoulder, scapular area. Well, you've got that there. The slippage bullae, let me just double check what that means. It's fluid-filled blisters that can form due to friction or trauma. One or the other. friction with the ground, trauma, or friction with an item, object, ground, or trauma by being hit with what, blunt force? Interesting. Let me know what you think up to now. As I said, I'm not an expert. I'm just trying to make sense of it. What I see right now, does it seem like I can work it out on the spot as to what truly happened? Well, just when I see the abrasions where it's heavily dominated on this particular slide, it just makes me think of being dragged across the ground somehow, rough terrain, probably more likely asphalt on the highway. Dead or alive by that point, who knows? The process of being dropped off, dumped, if it was staged as something else, if you was to think that way, would it be consistent with the injuries here? But, the avulsion at the top of the head, that's the biggest thing, the most important one, most influential on here at least. Because we did hear that it was mainly upper body injuries, more so the significant ones, the fatal ones. If we move on to here, I believe this is where it becomes a bit more internal, the hemorrhage. Internal lacerations. Okay. So, when you look on the front, I guess that's the exterior, nothing. But you got the hemorrhage to do with the head up there, and then more so when you look at it from the back, as it wraps about the head area. I know someone talked about a skull front or something, hinge fracture. Honestly, I can't remember what that meant, but was it the hinge fracture caused by such intense, hard trauma to the head in some way? I guess tying in line with the avulsion. And the avulsion area is around the area as what we see colour-coded where the hemorrhage is too. There is a bleed, on the skull, bleed in the brain as well. And then as for the chest area, you got both lungs, left and right, collapsed. Blood, was it blood loss or blood within, inside? And then, is that the heart? I think it's the heart. And then, what else do you have? It looks more like a bloody, I don't know what you'd call it. It looks like a tadpole with the X. Oh my God. But it's not good. It's not good. Because it's one of those things, definitely blunt related, not being stabbed, not being shot, none of that. You look at that and you think, oh, there's quite a lot of activity going on, but is it major? Well, if you used to put aside the avulsion, doesn't look that bad, does it? You could get whacked, walloped in the head, in the chest area with a blunt item, and it might not feel that bad in the moment, but you may not be okay later, depending on the timing of if there was internal bleeding in some way. Fills up in areas, fills up in the lungs, you have trouble breathing. Bleeding in the head, not good. Bleeding elsewhere, slower, and enough of it being lost, blood loss, not good for you, and then collapsing. So it's not what matters on the outside, it's what matters on the inside. And whatever Noah Presgrove was put through or encountered, accident or not, on the outside only tells a certain part of the story. But inside, bad enough. And I would say the hotspot area mainly being the head area, one of the most important parts. Because you think of the mind, the brain, how it can send messages and signals throughout the body. The neural pathways, very important part within the body. I mean, I guess you can have a heart transplant, you can have a lung transplant, but in terms of your brain, a lot more delicate and much more important. And can you have a brain transplant? I don't think you can, unless it might have been tried. I'm no expert. Maybe it probably has been tried. I don't know if it worked or not. I know in the past they've tried using animal organs within humans. I wouldn't know too much, to be honest. But yeah, we probably should move on to the next slide. Okay, here we go. We got the fracture. Oh, is this what you call the hinge fracture? Or what? It appears to be on the front area on the left-hand side, just above the ear. And then a bit further up. So where you've got a fracture, where you've got a hemorrhage is also where you've got the avulsion too. A lot going on in that particular area. not good at all. I mean, let's just say you took away certain injuries away. Okay? Not that you have to, but just take away all the abrasions, just keep the avulsion. Take away the hemorrhages in the lung area, take away any broken bones as well, and just focus, and the back as well, the neck area, just focus in on the upper head where the avulsion is, the hemorrhage, bleeding, internal, fracture. I think that injury just by itself is probably fatal enough to kill Noah. Do people agree or not? I don't know, maybe you could argue and say, depending, and if someone was there early and quick, could they have saved Noah or not? But when you look at the fractures on the back, yeah, not looking good. And is it consistent with where you see a lot of activity with the abrasions? Not so much, but that's just surface level. The vertebrae, was it C1, C2, C3, C4? There's certain numbers where if it's so far up, it's not good for you whatsoever, and it could pretty much equal just death, just like that. Is it a C1 vertebrae? Or is it the higher the number? I can't remember which way round it was, to be honest. I'll try and zoom in so you can see the spine in the middle area. And here's where there's fractures. What would have caused these fractures? Just from being slammed on the ground, falling on the ground, or more so being hit with force by an item, an object, something heavy. Heard references from the odd expert in the background who I believe appeared on Partners in True Crime being interviewed and said maybe Noah Presgrove was crushed by a vehicle. How do you get crushed by a vehicle? It drives over you, back and forth, over and over again. Some people in the background have said maybe drove over him a certain way so it wouldn't leave track marks on him. But are they going to be thinking that in the moment, if it's like a murder situation? Are people going to be thinking, right, I want to kill Noah, but we're going to drive in a different way, just get a different, to avoid any patterns on the body. It just seems like a lot of effort and thought in the moment. And if they're drunk as well, are they going to be going to such great lengths? If it truly is a murder situation in this case, based off the age ranges of what they are, and alcohol consumption, would it be a messy job or a professional job? You could argue and say it'd be a professional job just because of the way this case has gone and there's not been justice yet. That's one way of possibly interpreting it. I don't know if this video will cause any humans to get triggered, but you need to bring back that balance from different sides. Dark side, light side, in between, murder or not, right? Just what all comes with it along the way. And then this one's a little bit, I think what this person might have done, I'm not too sure, was it with tracing paper, where you like put all the layers on top of one another? If so, that's actually very clever in a way. Very interesting. And do we have any more? What's the difference here with that one? Oh, with the green as well and without the green. Right, okay. That's without hemorrhage, and this is with just about everything. So it seems very clear, and we would have seen it with time, that it's mainly dominated upper body, but rear more so. Rear upper body is where most of the damage is at. Being hit, being whacked, being struck with whatever. So does this mean to say that whatever killed Noah Presgrove got him from behind? Or if Noah Presgrove had fallen down on his face flat? Now, wasn't the mention of broken teeth, loose teeth? Was there a broken jaw or a broken nose? I don't see any of that listed here. Maybe I've misunderstood it, but I thought that could have been included. Right, okay. So I'm going to try and give you my thoughts right now. I'll probably show my face, so it's a bit more raw, the format. But it is interesting, the targeted area of the injuries, of course. So in no particular order, I just want to focus in on the murder concept as for the cause of death. In terms of time of death, maybe that can be for a separate time. Like I would say, give it from a different perspective in regards to Jack Newton there, but that's separate. Let's leave that out for now. The reference to blood being fresh, well, put that aside as well, because that can time with possible time of death. It's just the extent of the injuries. We said it was like brutal or overkill. Whether you see it as murder or not, it's bad enough. And I do think that if you take some of those injuries away, definitely the abrasion and stuff, and just focus on the head area, that's probably bad enough. If you took away the head area and had everything else, would Noah still be alive or not? But wasn't that mentioned by people internally decapitated, as in the vertebrae, because it's so high up, just gone like that, and that's why all loose and floppy? Something like that can kill you too. Well, it talks about, was it all caused at the same time? So in terms of the abrasions, the scrapes, surface level type stuff, and maybe the odd boulet, whatever you call it, could that surface level stuff occurred afterwards if Noah had been dumped somewhere based on a murder scenario? See, this is the thing. You talk about murder, a range of people can get very defensive. And maybe that's understandable, as in, oh, you think it's murder? Oh, you think it links to a party goer, a guest, a friend? And then family of family, parents get up in arms and defend their people because that's a normal thing to do. What if there is a murder situation, but it's with a complete stranger? Or by some small chance, a rogue party goer who most people don't expect nor really friends with for most part of it. Yes, it's a rural area. There might not be many other people out there besides the party guests and goers and friends, but what happens if there's the odd stray person? You've always got to think of the possibility. And you know why? Think of the Aidan Clune case, the Kenny Veach case, even more rural, as in where they've ended up walking off or going to. Kenny Veach in the middle of nowhere, miles away from civilization, and people think he was murdered out in the desert, that someone's going to travel miles upon miles, then spend 3 to 4 hours going to the mine shaft of Little Jermaine Canyon and maybe beyond to take Kenny Veach out. Cover such harsh terrain in a harsh environment, terrible temperatures, detrimental to your health if you're not experienced in doing it, and there's a possibility of Kenny being murdered. Well, if it's possible there by a stranger, it's even more possible in the Noah Presgrove case based off that mentality, right? Because in terms of the party house, the highway as well, main access route, long distance, people passing on through, and then the town of Terrell as well. If by any chance there was previous crimes committed or previous cases of people being found dead, and there was like a pattern of consistency which could tie in with Noah, that could be eye-opening, but yet to see that. I remember when in Warwick, when I was on Google Earth and came across a missing person poster of an older guy, and the odd local or person familiar with the area commented on my video saying, yes, that person's been missing for some time now and it's not been resolved. That's a missing person case, likely not going to link to Noah. But if there's any previous history in the past which could tie one thing with another, right? In a way, even though other people don't agree with it, I guess that's what some people were trying to do as for possible suspects being linked or related to previous deaths of other people. Like when the attempt was made to link the boating accident in the past with the Noah Presgrove case. Do I think it links directly? No. But I do think it's kind of unfortunate, wrong place, wrong time, but where one person goes, death follows on a couple of occasions. In a way, as in being present at the time or present just after it taking place. And that is all. So hopefully humans don't try twisting that. But in terms of the abrasions dumped on a highway, dropped, Just being dumped or dropped, would it cause that level of abrasion though? Or would you have to physically be dragged across the ground? Well, to be fair, let's just say on site of the property or nearer to the highway, someone or some people responsible. Noah's now dead on the ground. Oh, we need to transport him somewhere. Get him in the vehicle first. Do they pick him up, carry him, or do they drag his body across the ground? And that causes friction. If Noah had died or rolled onto his side, like the left, making contact with the ground and then being dragged by the arm to the vehicle to then be put in and then disposed of at the highway, that could have caused abrasions at that point. And if not there, maybe when dumped on the highway. But just simply being put down, placed down onto the ground or thrown down may not cause that level of abrasion. I'm no expert, okay? Unless there was a moving vehicle of some sort and rolled out, fell out, pushed out, murder situation scenario, or accidental vehicle-related death, but not a hit and run, right? Trying to understand, did all the injuries happen at the same time or within a small time frame of Noah's death taking place? And as well, if Noah had been attacked in some way on the property of the party house, and if he had been dumped on the highway, at what point would the time of death have been? And how quick would people have moved from doing what they did to then moving and disposing? Once Noah's placed at the highway, would he be dead or would he still be alive, taking his final breath? What do people think about that? So I'm just giving these different scenarios. But to focus in on the head area and also the back area, the vertebrae, there's a lot going on there. I mean, ribs broken. I don't know if I'm missing something or I'm blind, but I don't think I saw any broken rib markers on the front area of Noah's body in the diagram that I saw. Maybe I'm misinterpreting it wrong or something. I mean, yeah, mention of the collapsed lungs and the internal bleeding in those areas, but the layer on top of that, and the heart as well, which is underneath protected by the rib cage, and if ribs are broken, which so many of them were, there's impact to the front, but there's also impact to the back. More impact, more damage to the back than the front, maybe. Can you break ribs from being slammed down onto the ground? Yeah, possibly. Being slammed down on your back as well. It's just because, depending how you look at it, vehicle-related death or straight up a beating, at the time of whatever happened to Noah, would he have been facing the danger or had his back turned to it? So he wouldn't have known what hit him, literally. And then when getting hit or struck, falling to the ground, face planting the ground, a harder surface can mean more damage to the face, can mean a possible broken nose, loose or chipped teeth. You face plant the ground and you don't protect yourself in time, that can be problematic, can't it? So that can mess up your face to an extent. In terms of the avulsion on the top area of the head, the scalp being torn back, would that have been caused whilst Noah was standing or once he hit the ground, possibly? I wonder. But whilst you're face down on the ground, your back area and neck is completely exposed, and especially with not wearing a top at the time, there's no cushioning, there's no protection. He's not wearing a big, woolly, soft jacket, which could have absorbed some of the impact depending how much force was generated in the first place and what was being used. The reference to golf clubs, if we was to throw that in, right, with what Alicia was getting at some point in a conversation with Justin Roy in the past, whenever that was. Oh, what was it? It was like March 2024, I believe. Interesting. Would things have changed since? Who knows? There was a firm time where focus was on golf clubs and there was a heavy focus, and whenever Caden Pressey mentioned golf clubs, in a way, it probably would have pleased other people who were going along that route, as that was possibly what was used. Caden didn't just outright say, oh yeah, golf clubs were used to kill Noah, but just a mention of there was a mystery with the clubs, the fact that they were there, but then they weren't later, that they ended up at a scrap pile behind Jack's place, which was odd, and then later they disappeared once again. And that at the time of when coming across, one or a few had damaged dents to the clubs, so they've been used. Oh, damage to the club, damage to Noah's body, used so much or used with force they actually damaged the club when making contact with Noah's body. Does it link? You could think to an extent, but what you've also got to understand, just with common sense, Caden Pressey did say that when at the party with Noah and some other guys, they were using those golf clubs to smash all kinds of objects. You're supposed to be whacking golf balls only, but if you're using clubs against harder objects, bricks and stones and anything else in between, that could cause the clubs to chip, break, bend, warp, have a dent in, a fracture running up the arm or the spine of it. There's other ways damage can be caused by that. So I think that has been a bit underestimated in a way there. At one point I looked into the golf clubs and thought it was a little weird, only because of how it was going about and how it was being talked about, that you got clubs, then they disappear, and then they're found elsewhere, as in a scrap pile. Sounds like they're being disposed of. Just a factor of Noah Presgrove's, even though they weren't his personal possessions in general, because they were Dalen's, on behalf, at the time, there was Noah's. So does it give anyone the right to take them away and move them on, when either it's a piece of evidence or it's at least a memento of some sort, that they should be handed back to the family or a family member? Has there been counterpoints in recent time to say that the clubs were returned back to the family? Well, then it would be on the family then to report back publicly and say whether they've got them or not. And from the looks of it, that hadn't happened. So it's one of those things where the general public can believe certain stuff, try and make sense of it themselves, go all in on a particular outcome and maybe tie it in with the murder theory scenario. That can piss some of the dark side off and think, oh God, we're hearing it all over again. It's not that, it was never. And as for the clubs, or as for this or that, they were never missing. They were actually returned. They went to the rightful owner. But you can't blame the general public for that. It will fall back on somebody else, like family members or police, to give an update as in what's truly happened to a certain piece of possible evidence or just an item of interest. And the golf clubs or the bag, the clubs in general, are an item of interest. Just like with Noah's hat, just like with Noah's shirt, wallet, pieces of interest. But from how the family have communicated, some of which has not gone too well. Or was it Robin Smith, Ashley Chadwick, in the last Partners in True Crime interview many months ago now, had said these items had never been returned back to the family. But then, months later, you get some random guy online on Facebook claiming to be an ex to Noah Presgrove's biological mother, saying, oh yeah, she passed on Noah's possessions to me, most of them. Why, of all people? And why wasn't Victor Presgrove informed? Why wasn't maybe Dalen or Madison Rawlings? Is there a breakdown in communication with the Presgrove family? That in the past on Facebook, there was comments by Noah's biological mother about what being singled out or left out of things with his son, separated. I don't know all the details because I can't remember it, but it has been documented on my channel. Was it as a means of, because of how everything has gone with time and how I've been treated by other family members in this moment where I've actually got a piece of Noah with me and the comfort and the closure, I'm not going to be sharing that with other family members based off how they've treated me in the past. I know it gets a bit personal there, but these comments were made public by Noah's mother from the looks of it. So there was that at some point. If you want to contest or counter it, give updates, you can down below in the comments section. But, breakdown in communication with key people, general public left in the dark, what are they expected to think, expected to do. Even if there is an unpopular theory or a very unlikely one, you shouldn't get lots and lots of abuse for thinking about it, providing you use the appropriate wording and language. Other people out there that have used bold words and statements saying that Noah was murdered can be a bit problematic because you weren't there to see it yourself. There could be other factors to take in mind or future findings, who knows. To say that there's a chance that Noah could have been murdered, possibly murdered, that's better language and wording. If you get attacked for that, well, that's unfortunate. You know, it's just your opinion. Shouldn't be the end of the world, but others out there treat it like it's the end of the world and go at you. It's like with Alicia Lee, the whole reference of the golf clubs. Is that how it got influenced in the first place, where Alicia said, well, I think, that's what people miss out on. I think that Carter whacked Noah in the head with a club and then walked away or ran away, and then whatever else happened. So you're saying that particular whack by Carter is what caused the avulsion on top and possible the hemorrhage as well and the bleeding, and then what? People finished him off afterwards? I mean, the thing is, if you take away some of the extensive injuries, the fractures, the broken bones, and if it was just one head injury, one blow to the head, this head, and Noah was outside or walked away stumbling about, walking disorientated, possibly towards the highway, not quite thinking clear, then collapsing and then dropping dead. Distance covered. One strike, one blow, one injury, bad enough to kill the person. Maybe not immediately, but with time. It's not as simple as that, though, is it here? And take in mind, what Alicia had said at some point in the past was that's what she thinks, not what she knows. She's giving an opinion. That's not a problem, is it? But maybe with time, maybe through Chinese whispers, if there was any, could words have changed to, oh yeah, have you heard about Alicia? Yeah, she actually said this, she said that. No, she doesn't think it, she knows it. Oh, it's a fact. Oh yeah, it is a fact. Yeah, Noah has been whacked in the head with a golf club. We've heard from what Kane Pressey said anyway about him being found at a scrap pile, so that must mean they were disposed of to get rid of evidence. And they were damaged anyway, so they must have been used on Noah's body. So at the end of the day, Noah was murdered and Noah was taken out with clubs and Carter Combs was responsible. Now, any naughty individuals try clipping that to try and twist my words, I'll be very disappointed. I'm giving you a scenario as in Chinese whispers, how it can come about. But you look at the original conversation, all Alicia is doing is giving her thoughts and opinion. Now, why would Alicia think suspiciously of Carter Combs of all people in that moment around March of 2024? What about 2023? From 23 to 24 and the months in between? Why the reference to Carter? Now, I don't know if it was within the same text conversation, but I'm sure we saw a comment about, yes, I think it was within the same one. I might even do a follow-up video, to be honest. I've still got the screenshots of it on my phone, understanding the language and wording, between Justin and Alicia about the argument which occurred Sunday, 3 in the morning. Other people are referring to, no, what they actually mean is Monday morning. Right. 3 a.m. an argument. Would that be before or after the side-by-side rollover then? Would that be before or after the shower? Would it be before or after the teabagging? Before or after the sleeping debacle? At 3:30 is when Noah supposedly walks away. Sometime in between, isn't there, to fill the gaps? Did Noah walk away just because of the bedroom situation, because of being rejected from being taken home, because of the argument with Jack, having enough of it, or just a combination of it all, getting too much, wanting to get away from it and catch a breath for a moment or two, but then things going wrong after that point? See, it's one of those things. Time of death, a mystery. Cause of death, in a way, a mystery because it's not been officially confirmed. Location of death, a mystery. Is there a particular way you could separate them into 3 categories, 3 separate mysteries, and solve each one by one? Do you solve the cause of death first, or do you solve the location of death? Do you solve the time of death first, just because of the reference to blood being fresh? If by some chance you've got a certain idea of time of death, then you might have a certain idea of location of death. Wow, I'm impressing myself. Sorry, I sound a bit cocky that. What I'm getting at is, and I don't know if we'll introduce it into the future, but let's just say the fresher it is, as in like when police or authorities are present, and the closer to the time of death, as in closer to when people started coming about and hearing, seeing it. But it means later on, as in the timeline of Noah. And the later on it is, the further he could be away from where things may have happened or where he was last seen. If the blood and anything else, fluids, are quite old, dry, you can bring it back earlier into the day, closer to earlier timings of events. That if somehow, let's say Noah Presgrove left at the party house at 3:30 and he died at 3:40. That's just an example. Only a matter of 10 minutes. To get from walking out the house to down the highway, would you manage to do that in 10 minutes? Yes or no? Let's just use more of a rough, raw one, just to really hammer it home as to what I'm getting at here. If you figured out the freshness or the lack of freshness of bodily fluids and blood, and it seemed to correlate closer to the time of when Noah walked away, if he walked away at 3:30 and 2 minutes later, that's when his time of death occurred, he likely would have died on site of the property. You know, working out the distance and timing of getting from point A to point B, or ending up at point A, then point B. A is the property, B is the highway. And if you died before reaching the highway or point B, then it's a little bit suspicious, right? For them to be ended up elsewhere after that point. So for it to make sense dying on the highway, then likely the freshness would have to be more fresher than older. Older it is, closer it is to when Noah walked away from the house, but still on site of property, to then the next event unfolding. So if by some chance it's old and it's earlier in the day and closer to 3:30 of when walking away, and in chance of it still being present on site, then the cause of death, you would look around you, what is present, people, partygoers and vehicles, accident or murder, one or the other. You see how it goes? So it seems like you could possibly try and work out the time of death or estimate it. Then you can possibly work out the location, estimate. And then depending on the location and environment of what's about and what's present, you could tie that in with the possible cause of death. Like, let's say a different situation, you worked out time of death, location, ocean, water, sea. What do you see? Water. What does it come down to in terms of like the death? If somehow you didn't know at first and you were working it out, water in the body, water in the lungs, what, drowning? See, the only counter one, and that's with the Riley strain case where he was found in water, but he didn't have water in his lungs or something. I think that's how it went, that he would have died on land and then later ended up in the water. So there was no drowning, basically. That's where it gets a little bit more complex. Two different environments, but close together amongst one another. If you're dealing with one environment and there's limited stuff about, you might be able to pinpoint what exactly caused the death. In the ocean, what do you have around you? Rocks, islands? No. Cars, boats? No cars. Boats? Not that likely, unless you're in a certain pathway of where there might be a lot of transportation coming through. depends where you are in the world as well, wildlife, sharks or not. It's going to be more likely drowning and or temperatures of the water and so on. In terms of the Noah Presgrove case, you've got at least two environments. You've got the party house and then you've got the highway. In both areas, what's consistent? The presence, possibly, of vehicles. In both areas, what's also consistent? Well, if there's going to be vehicles, then likely there's going to be people as well. On the highway, vehicles passing on by in whatever volume. And for vehicles to be passing on by, people are going to be inside of them. Well, at least you would hope so. Party house, vehicles present, high chances that people are home or visiting. And that's obviously the case because we've seen it documented, people at the house. So at the house, there are more factors, more variables at play, which could tie in with possible causes of death towards Noah. But with being present at the highway, there's less factors there. There's more factors of Noah being in more of a vulnerable situation, alone and in the dark, and to drivers not expecting to come across someone like Noah. At the party house, the vulnerabilities of one against all, one against a range of different people if there was some kind of fight or breakout. I'm trying to balance it out with the murder and the accidental death of some sort, or just like a homicide maybe. Is that more appropriate to use a homicide on the road, on the highway, a murder on the property? But are the people in between that may think, you know what, an accident, a homicide, on site of the property, and then partygoers incriminated themselves by staging it as something else because they panicked. That's the other little alternative what some people would have. But if I was just to tie it in with an interpretation based off the murder concept, based off what Alicia has got at some point, not directly by Carter, and I'll just mention it now because I probably didn't mention it before. The conversation between Justin and Alicia, recalling that Cade and Pressy had overheard an argument between Noah and Jack. But the context of the argument was to do with Jack flirting with Noah's girlfriend and Noah giving him a piece of his mind. Jack responding back with, well, you've done it to my girlfriends over the time, so I might as well give it back, an eye for an eye. That timestamp was supposedly 3 a.m. Sunday, but maybe an accident meaning Monday instead. Well, still, it's a problem because if you mean Monday 3 a.m, that would mean it's the second argument. The first argument was Saturday, but past midnight going into Sunday morning, right? Depends how you interpret it. The reason why it was a problem by Alicia is because if it was 3 a.m. Sunday, maybe not the right timestamp, but closer to Saturday, past midnight going into Sunday, which Caden said in his interview, to do with Noah and Jack. Jack being the problem, Noah giving a piece of his mind. Fair enough, no issues there. But then in the same sentence to say that's the same time or roundabout when Georgia left. No, that is a problem. Georgia did not leave the party at 3 a.m. on Saturday because she wasn't there Saturday. She didn't leave 3 a.m. on Sunday because Caden Pressy said that she arrived at 10:30 p.m. Sunday night. And in terms of when she left, or at least made it back home, wherever she lives, Caden got a call at 2:43 a.m. Monday morning about that. So that's what's a mess, isn't it? I think mistakes were made with what Alicia was recalling or saying back then. And with it being a conversation in the background at the time, it wasn't that detrimental to the case. But with how things have transpired since, and Facebook pages showing these posts public, not looking too good, is it? It becomes a problem. So in terms of that conversation with Carter, conversation with Alicia and Justin, the argument between Jack and Noah, and the reference to do with girl trouble and flirting with behind the back of the girlfriend, okay? And then Noah's response, mentioned either by Justin or Alicia, that supposedly what was heard, that Noah said he was going to tell Carter Combs what Jack had been doing. Jack flirting with Noah's girlfriend, Noah telling Jack's girlfriend at the time, Carter Combs, about what's happened. So like kind of cheating in a way. I don't think Jack would be too pleased with that. But would that justify Carter Combs whacking Noah over the head and then walking away? More so, you think Carter Combs would be using the golf club on Jack's head for what Jack has done behind Carter's back. Noah shouldn't be blamed for what Jack has done. Does that make sense? If Jack has flirted with Noah's girlfriend, it's understandable why Carter Combs, the girlfriend to Jack, wouldn't be too pleased at the time. Cheating, lack of trust, not giving your all or attention to that one person you're with, that one special individual. You go elsewhere and do other stuff in the background. In a situation like that, if Carter had been affected and Noah was the one to tell Carter, you think Carter would be more mad at Jack and not at Noah. So it wouldn't really justify Carter whacking Noah over the head with a golf club. Noah didn't ask Jack to cheat on Carter, did he? Did he not? So a little bit of a weird situation there. I'm basing that all off from what Alicia said, what she thinks Carter whacking Noah in the head with a golf club once. And the only thing that could justify that would be if Noah had done something bad or wrong to Carter. But if it's to link with Jack flirting elsewhere, that's not Noah's fault. So what else could Noah have done which compromised it or annoyed Carter? Would it be the shower situation? And Carter's like, oh, because of all this, my situation with Jack has been tarnished now. I hate you, Noah. I don't know. I'm trying to work it out. These possibilities, these supposed outcomes. But just take in mind, as said by Alicia, what she thinks, not what she knows with 100% confidence. She wasn't there herself. Now, Caden Pressey, some of these details, Caden Pressey has never mentioned, but Alicia has. So what's really going on there? I know that this video is supposed to be the medical terms and the autopsy, but some of these possible attacks to Noah physically, could they tie in with those injuries? And to refer back to if Noah was hit or struck with some kind of object, golf club or not, is that what caused the avulsion on top? Or did it just simply knock Noah down to the ground, unconscious or not? And then by falling down to the ground, most of you is whacked from behind like a cheap shot, it would tie in line with the direction Noah may have been heading if he had left the house, walking away, and someone behind him, following him, or people waiting for him to pass by and then strike. So it may knock him out or just knock him forwards onto the ground, hitting the ground, knocking him out, or just making him a bit dazed. Face injuries because of hitting the ground. And then the extent of the fractures, the back area, being repeatedly stamped, beaten in that sense, upper body mainly. What would cause the abrasions and stuff on the legs and the cheeks, the buttocks, at the time of being beaten or later when being disposed of? Can you let me know your thoughts there? So, is there anything what anyone would agree with, like in terms of consistency? Would there be a consensus that murder or not, that whatever happened to Noah hit him from behind? Would people agree with that or not? Is there anything else I can mention? If it was a vehicle though, and Noah was on the left-hand side of the hard shoulder, as in if you was to leave the property, leaving the property would be heading east. Ending north at the highway would mean turning left when you come out of the little driveway. And if you left and you're walking along that hard shoulder where you were later found dead further on north, you're walking towards oncoming traffic. So if Noah had been hit by a vehicle, where Noah was found at, Is that where he was hit as well? Or did he actually travel a bit further up north, then hit and pushed backwards down south? Not too far though, depending on the size and shape of a vehicle or truck. I know hit and run ruled out, but you still have had, with time, people of the dark side pushing that possibility. What I would like to say is, as a counterpoint, for everyone that thinks that the LE is corrupt and not doing enough and covering for the dark side, some party goers possibly, like they know what's up, they know it's a murder, and they may be staged or so, or let's just put aside the possibility of it being staged or not, that the police are just simply corrupt in general. Not that they are, but that's what people are saying out there. And protecting partygoers and family members of family. If that's really true, does it make sense that police rule out hit and run, but family members, partygoers, whoever, dark side, some believe it's a hit and run? On the conditions that if it's known across different boards and maybe certain authority that it was staged to look like a hit and run, but for the police to reject that, that's almost like a kick into the face of the same people that they're supposedly protecting, right? In a corrupt way. It's counterproductive. It doesn't make sense. I hope people get that. Reference what I'm referring to. If the police or certain police are truly corrupt, and if they knew who's responsible, and if they knew it was staged as a hit and run, then the police would try and push that concept of a hit and run. And for the family members or certain family members to believe it's a hit and run, and still do over time, the police should be in line with that so it's consistent. So it diverts it away even more from the real truth. But for the police to put their foot down and say it's been ruled out, and for the certain family members to still believe it's a hit and run, going against what the police have said, it's a breakdown in communication, and there's less corruption there, there's more disruption and a lack of synchronicity, I would say. It's kind of like with the autopsy report, the official autopsy report. If the ME is corrupt, or if the police tied in are corrupt with the scene and how it's been handled and dealt with, but the mention of shoes on Noah, mismatched ones, which Cade and Pressy had referenced at least in the interview, what Tyler Hardy, I believe, had referenced as well as an individual, and the ME as well, what they saw. And then it being officially documented in the documents, autopsy, as in mismatched shoes found on Noah's naked body. Officially confirmed. And then Jack Newton, of all people, later on, Partisan True Crime, says only one shoe was on Noah's foot. The other shoe was elsewhere. And then you got Donna Bond that mentioned that she has seen, or she's been in possession at one point of a video or so which showed Noah naked and shoeless, no shoes whatsoever. There is no consistency there. Shoe on, shoe off, hat on, hat off, magic trick. Oh boy, that's a problem. So if there is corruption, is it in sync corruption or not? Because from how I've worded it just there, it just seems a bit of a mess in general. The whole situation is a bit of a mess, and at times the community can be a mess. Right now, I'm a mess. More so my hair. It needs work. Unfortunately, stylist, busy, nowhere to be seen, showing up late, busy styling somebody else's hair. Is that before or after washing in the shower to clean it? I don't know, personally. As for Brooke Bounds Carter, too busy tending to the donkey sanctuary, trying to assist and help them as well, transforming them into racehorses somehow. Amazing, wow. And as for Beauty Guru, are you trapped in Walmart right now or Home Depot? I hope not. Need to be focused in with this video. Well, to some extent. Up to now, hopefully people have found it somewhat interesting. Look, this is the thing. Maybe I've talked more about a murder scenario than I have as in an accident, but I'm only working with what I have in my mind. right? And it might be telling, it might just go to show how long I've truly spent around a certain community, the light side more than the dark side, hence why I can talk more about the possible murder situation than an accident. So it's like another counterpoint, an underlying one to the people that have called me biased for suddenly switching to the dark side. But in actual fact, how I've spoken today, it could be thrown back at me and be worded as, no, I'm being biased towards the light side. Okay? I can see it, I can sense it. I'm only doing what I can at this moment in time. Is there any other examples of an accident or something that went wrong? If it's something that went wrong or an accident, and if it was by the hands of party goers, friends or strangers or Texas boys or somewhat of a rogue individual, and it went slightly wrong, well, to end up at the highway, panicking, moving the body on, you're still incriminating yourself. It's still a bit of a problem, isn't it? And a bit cowardly as well, if that did happen. Could a vehicle have crushed Noah? If Noah was face down on the ground, then a vehicle landed on top. Well, if it really did, if the tyre made contact with the head full on, depending on the weight, it would probably be like a watermelon crushed. I have seen footage. It's dark, but it's been realistic, where people of varying ages in different situations may have gone underneath a vehicle, more so heavier than typical stuff. So that's one factor you got to take in mind, the weight factor. The heavier, the more fatal. And from what I've seen, as a vehicle has gone over somebody's head, completely flat. As for everything that comes out, all over. Okay? That's not mean in real life. Just as a heads up. It's not heads up. What a pun. But no, not in real life. But real things, footage, which, you can come across at times. If you've got a side-by-side or a pickup truck, would that be enough to crush somebody's head completely, like a watermelon, as in driving over someone's head? Maybe it's the speed that you go at as well, and more so the weight factor and limit. But would driving over somebody's head be an accident or not? Oh, Noah Presgrove was laying in a field and a vehicle accidentally drove over him, unknown. That'd be weird. I mean, can I just throw in a weird factor or a theory? And maybe it's never been really mentioned before. You add one thing with another. Noah Presgrove walks away. At some point, people get a bit concerned, try searching for him. Possibly in a vehicle as well. Going where exactly? Highway. What about the fields nearby, if that's a possibility? Driving through the field, like how they did in the Ford Ranger when shooting those animals Sunday afternoon, going into the evening. Is there any weird chance, and it's only a theory, that Noah Presgrove was laying in a field or somewhere, kind of out of sight, poor vision, dark? People in a vehicle or side-by-side are driving in the field trying to search and accidentally run Noah over. And then they panic. And then they have to move on. Would that have caused a loose teeth as well in that moment? I don't know, personally. But if it did, does that tie in line with the slip of the tongue? Or, not a slip of the tongue, just an example given by Sarah Long about, and if Noah was in a field and his teeth were all up there, loose, and partygoers had to pick them up individually and take it all to the highway to then dispose of it, just doesn't seem likely. Why are we even mentioning the reference of a field, a wheat one specifically? We never really went into that. Just came out of nowhere. Unless it's a subconscious, indirect reference in a way, as in when supposedly Jack Newton made a reference about, well, if Noah had gone into the field, he'd probably come back when it gets too hot. If that's ever been, like an example like that has ever been mentioned to Sarah Long could say, well, if that's where Noah was, but he didn't make it back because he ended up dying out there, would partygoers honestly be picking up teeth in a field? Maybe not. But if Noah had died in a field and if people were responsible, and if it was done with intent or it was accidental somehow, they probably would panic and they probably would pick the teeth up and try and move things up. Really, at the end of the day, if there was like footprints or track marks you could work off from, that would really help. And that's not the case. And yet with quite a few missing person cases in rural areas, there's been some kind of traces of footprints. Even the Aidan Clune one, which was quite deep and mysterious and still ongoing. Footprints found months later, maybe a year or so onwards. Crazy. Conditions are important as well. Unfortunately, the Noah Presgrove case, with it being quite dry, warm, humid, the ground's going to be really hard and dry. You're not going to be leaving footprints unless it was just a dirt path. You leave a footprint, it's going to blow away eventually. And if it does rain in between or if it freezes, that can break up footprints. Not as much of a worry in this particular case at the time, but let's just say it was like really muddy, the area, and very wet. You see track marks all over, they might be preserved. Footprints as well could be preserved. But then again, depending where Noah did walk and if vehicles did come or go in between, it could have overlapped with the footprints and destroyed the evidence anyway, and it would have been pointless. But if you had footprints to go off from, you could follow Noah's footprints. Where did he go? Footprints would prove if he left the house or not. Footprints beyond that would prove whether he left the property, land, or not. And additional footprints could reinforce that Noah wasn't alone. Take in mind, I think it might have been Robin Smith, one of the Presgrove family members, maybe the aunt, that made a reference about there is proof that Noah Presgrove wasn't alone, that there was someone or some people around him at the time of his death. How come that gets forgotten about? What the hell does that mean? Does that literally mean when Noah died, as in accident or not, there was people around him watching, witnessing? Or is it more so that, well, close to when Noah passed away, he was near to the party house, he was last seen there, so that kind of counts as he wasn't alone? No, it doesn't make as much sense, that. So, just these casual references. Oh yeah, Noah passed away at 4 a.m. And needs to be a bit more to that. An understanding. The timestamp of 3 a.m. when Noah Jack had that argument. Gurgel and Georgia left. That doesn't make sense. We need context there. However, there is evidence that Noah Presgrove was in the presence of someone or some people at the time of his death, as one of the Presgrove family members has said on a Facebook post in the past. I think we need a bit more context with that. What's that evidence exactly? Footprints? Nope. Video footage? I don't know. Audio? Don't know. Photo? Timestamp? Don't know. There's got to be something as evidence. Weird. Unless Robin worded it as evidence at the time of her knowledge, as in what something else happened or what was said at the time. If Jack had said, well, Noah passed away 4 a.m, and Robin internalized that as, well, if Jack knows time of death, then that must be the evidence to say that Jack was around at the time of when Noah died, hence being in the same place at the same time. Once again, I'm just giving you a scenario, what could have happened, how the mind can work. But if it's not being run over accidentally, if it's being crushed, how do you get crushed? Normally crushed is when something falls on top of you and remains there until you die or are pulled out, basically. Crushed, completely flattened like a 2D object, or crushed as in bones and stuff like that. Based off the injuries to Noah, more so on the back area, upper body. You could be crushed on your back, and all that pressure pressing you down can cause your front area being pressed against the ground as well to crush in, being compressed. One thing's moving, the other thing's not. You're in between, and you're getting closer and closer to that wall, like if there was a car in one of those crushers. But I think in those car crushers, both move inwards. But you get what I'm saying? If one moves inwards, the other one remains, you're going to be crushed and pressed up against the wall, okay? If you're pressed up against the wall with enough force and pressure, you could possibly die. Even on a less severe, gruesome outcome, when you've had great amounts of crowds lining up to go to a stadium, a match, some kind of sports, people so crowded, crushed, compressed, people can't breathe, people can die, and others may fall over and get trodden on, stampeded. So, if it can happen on a smaller scale, less gruesome, but still serious, then any heavy object which could fall on Noah can be even worse and damaging, but it would have had to have fallen on the upper area of the body rather than lower area. Sideways, vertical, horizontal. And would it really be the act of a heavy object falling from above? Like from the sky? Or on what do you call, like an excavator with a chain and so it dangling above and then it's dropped onto Noah? No, I don't think so. I think other people have suggested if Noah had been, standing or laying down and a vehicle was driving about, jumping over Noah, but timing it incorrectly and landing on him. If that was the case, based off the spread of the wheels, maybe only one wheel would have landed on Noah's body and crushed a certain area. We're talking about the back shoulder area on a certain side, the vertebrae. Yeah, that crush compactness can break vertebrae and fractures and whatnot. And then being pressing with the ground pressing you down. What's on top, what's below you. Face being crushed, teeth being crushed, it's been pressed. I saw it in a match with Khamzat Chimaev and Robert Whittaker in UFC. Went for a choke, but it wasn't under the neck, it was across the jaw. Cranking it back, really squeezing so much that the lower teeth ended up bending inwards and almost breaking off. The fear and panic in Robert Whittaker's face because of that intense grip and force, pressing inwards, crushed. I wouldn't do a demonstration right now because I'm not going to crush myself unless somebody wants to crush me, and that doesn't sound appropriate. But if a wheel of a vehicle and it's somewhat heavy, crushing down on your body, pressing you in, your body pressing onto the ground, ribs possibly breaking, ribs breaking inwards, snapping off and puncturing a lung maybe, which causes it to collapse. No expert there. There might be a lot of concentration on a particular part of the body, but I don't see where it ties in with the head. I'm only basing it off more so the spread of the wheels here and then the next set of wheels lower down. Unless a vehicle jumps a gap, goes over a bump for some reason, lands on Noah, back area, whether Noah is stood up or laying down, and the vehicle lands on him, bounces a little bit or moves slightly afterwards, then goes over the head, but at an angle, not completely crushing the head, but catching, which causes the scalp to tear, an avulsion. Said, I'm not an expert, but trying to work out what could have caused it. If a vehicle was to crush Noah, would it have been intentional or would it have been an accident? Honestly, it's just one of those things. If anyone had an issue with Noah and wanted him dead, you're at a party, there's alcohol, people not thinking clearly, and there's firearms. Oh God. Now, yeah, maybe firearms could give it away and you wouldn't be able to get away with it. But truly, if you want someone dead, it's heat of the moment, you're not thinking clearly, you're drunk as well and you're young, but you've got a tool, a firearm, which you're familiar with, you probably use that. Why would you think of getting into a vehicle, right, I'm going to do it this way around? Oh, because you can get away with it better than shooting someone. But are people really going to be thinking that far ahead at the time? Or they're more focused on them getting revenge or just hurting someone like Noah? That's where you got to put into perspective. More likely to use a firearm if you want to kill someone than other objects. But maybe not everyone had a firearm. Because is that an example of it being overestimated or over-exaggerated, the amount of firearms present on site at the party? Because Renault made a reference, supposedly, well, we need the AR, Jax, we need Brylan Sweat's hunting rifle, and we need Isaac Rojas' 12-gauge shotgun. how many firearms were at the party in total? Besides those 3 firearms, if there was like 40 people at the party at some point, how many of the 40 people had firearms? If that could be answered, that would help. If it just so happens that not everyone had a firearm at the time of Noah's death, then if anyone was responsible, they probably wouldn't use a firearm if they don't have one themselves. So they might resort to another item or vehicle. If it had been an accident gone wrong, in that sense, has a vehicle jumped a gap before and was successful? Yep. That's in reference to Ken and Pressy, Noah, Jack at the time of in the field, I think, or on the way back to the party house when they were driving back. Was that along the highway? If it was along the highway, where are those bumps at? A bump in the road? A bump? A platform? A ramp? To cause, to drive over it to then leap over whatever. You didn't gauge the distance correctly. So when you did it at the time of when Noah was, walking away or doing something by himself, the vehicle landed on him. Now, you could say maybe that side-by-side is the time of Noah's death, but maybe it wasn't a side-by-side rollover, it was something else. Like a cover-up amongst a cover-up amongst a cover-up. An accident gone wrong. Well, if that was ever the case, as long as there is possible video footage of a side-by-side rollover or the after effects and Noah is still alive, well then that will clear up a lot, won't it? What you really need in this case is simple material, simple evidence that can be publicly revealed and has a chain effect of answering several questions in one go. That can possibly happen. Has it happened yet? Not quite. Because you've got to understand from different perspectives and different sides, some people will still react negatively and find a way to complain, and other people will still find a way to be skeptical. It's not a bad thing, but where do you draw the line? And not to get too deep, if you get certain people within the case, like Caden Pressy or Alicia or Justin, or some of the people that say, well, phone data proves that Caden was here at this time and that 5:15 was correct. You'd hope to believe in that, but that's just by words of the people, not the actual physical hard evidence. In the eyes of them that may have seen it, they can believe in it and they know it. But in the eyes of the general public that don't have access to it, they've got to take someone's word, and that's not enough. So, general public should be allowed to remain skeptical until it's actually shown the hard evidence. But given a situation with these Snapchat posts in recent time where a form of an attempt of evidence has been put across to show a perspective or a counterpoint, even though actual physical material has been shown, that has not been good enough because it's been deemed as manipulated, altered with. So what would happen then, besides police confirming it, if Caden Pressy's phone data before police confirming it was released public, what would the attitude be there by people? Oh, it must be true because we can see the phone data and it must be true. It's not been altered with, it's not been manipulated. Oh, but if you use the same mindset of those people that say it towards the Snapchat post as in back then towards them now, that you'd be saying, yeah, okay, phone data shows, has it been confirmed by police yet? No. Could it have been manipulated or altered with? Yes. And you will get attacked for it just by questioning Caden, which shows double standards within this case and community. However, if it's true, and if it was possible that the phone data shown public at some point, which has already been previously confirmed by police as well, the same police which are considered as corrupt by some, well then you probably can believe in the phone data a lot more and have hope and trust within it, and that would help. In terms of these Snapchat posts, which show a timestamp and a date, if these Snapchat posts have been confirmed and validated by police as being natural and genuine, shouldn't that be enough? But that element hasn't been provided publicly, or at least made clear. So that's probably why people are still skeptical about it. That a piece of evidence isn't enough. You need a confirmation by police or authorities on top of it to double down and confirm it. See, the Dylan Rounds case, that came much later on, but what was said by the family was true, parts of it, early on. Not everyone believed it because it was just taking their word as truth, and that wasn't good enough in the eyes of people. But it was good enough for me at times, and I believed in it, and it turned out to be right. You can't apply that same mentality with the Presgrove case because of how deeper it is and how many more stories there are and how more inconsistent it is amongst different people. So honestly, I think I'm going to leave that video here for now. It was one of these videos where I thought it would probably be absolutely shit because I'm not good with this stuff, but I think somehow dodgy Dr. Raf managed to pull out the medical notes and try and get a slightly better understanding of it. Have I actually reached a conclusion as of tonight? What I would say is no. What I would say is I need to do a video on the shorts to get a better understanding there, which will help what I've done today. See, the stuff I might not understand or fail at in life, if I find an alternative which can link to it or work in other ways, and I do it that way because it works more or it's more comfortable, and it has the same effect, if not greater, at the end of it, then that's what I can do. So something like the autopsy, the medical terms and all of that, which I might struggle with, if I go off and think outside of the box and look at the shorts or some other variable you can measure, which can tie in with possibly the same time as Noah's death, if I can work it out more visually or with a demonstration than I can with notes, and it leads to the same outcome, that's a positive. So yeah, I'll probably try and do that next time round. Why do the shorts matter so much? Because first of all, it's understanding the condition they're in and which ones worn at the time of the death, and trying to work out, well, if damage can be caused to shorts, does that link to how damage is caused to the body or not? So we'll get to that at a later point. Hopefully people managed to watch most of the video and understood it. If you'd like to share, that'd be appreciated. If you want to hit the thumbs up as well down there, that'll be good to see. And just once again to reiterate, if you do want to support this channel, but you don't want greedy YouTube taking most of it away from when you give to the channel, because they take 40% or something, I do have a PayPal link down below in the pinned comment section there and available. Credit to those that have supported the channel, and credit to everyone that has watched this video. That's all good. My name's Noah Presgrove. I'll see you next time, but for now, goodbye and good night.